Starting soon.
Hello and welcome back to Album Book Club. This week we are reviewing the album Foerign by Minnows, and we have a very special guest. We have Mike from A Tiger Made of Lightning.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
All right.
Cool, we got audio.
Got audio.
This is a rock album that came out in March of last year, 2024, and I had a really good time with it, and I hope everybody else did as well. So let's get right into our top three. My top three were Choke, Two Truths, and Make Us Soldiers.
All right, I had Swirly, Choke, and Passion Time.
It's crazy how me and Carson almost had the same one. Choke, Make Us Soldiers, and Future Ruins.
I had Future Ruins, Fists Unite, and Two Truths.
And I had Passion Thief, Swirly, and Future Ruins.
Cool. Well, that brings us into our bottom song. My bottom song was Rifles and Makeup.
Mine was also Rifles and Makeup.
Mine was also Rifles and Makeup.
Mine was Curses from Convenience.
Oh, that was...
I hate answering this question because I feel like I didn't have a bottom song. I like all of them, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be Curse from Convenience, but I feel really bad saying that because it's also a really good song.
I really just picked the song. I was like, this is the okayest of them all. They were all good.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it is here on Album Book Club. You know, sometimes you get a really good album and then you don't want to pick anything as your bottom song. And that's kind of what happened here. I do have a gripe with that song in particular, and I think some other people will agree with me. But without further ado, let's get into song number one. I mean, it was your two's bottom song too.
Yep.
Let's get right into song number one, Buried Needles. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Ooh, I gave it a 7 1/4.
Gave it a 7 out of 10.
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
I gave it a 9.6 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
I think it's a great opener, man. It's like right off the bat, you know, it's really exciting. It gets you going. It really gives you a taste of like what the rest of the album's gonna be. It gives you that like super heaven, but if it was fronted by Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr., like immediately, and I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a really good start. But one of the things that I didn't like too much about it was the mix, and that's something that I know Carl is going to get into more. We were talking about it a little bit before the live, but I thought the background stuff was great. I just had to have it turned up really loud to hear it. And the overall, like, I felt like it was a really good performance that got muddied up in the mix.
Yeah, I had a similar issue with having to turn it up really loud. Usually I'll have like, I think it's 4 up on Apple Music's volume and then whatever my computer already is, but I had to go like halfway for today because I work in a like dead silent office, so turning it up loud is usually not an option, and also any amount is too loud. So, but I was really loud today. But yeah, I liked the hook of this song. I liked the guitar solo. Just overall, you're right, a good way to start this album.
I can go. I really liked the guitar tone. I liked the drum tone. Killer chord choices. The song is catchy. There's a great breakdown. I mean, it has all the hallmarks of a really good piece. The only problem, like what you guys talked about, the mix is just not. I don't. At first, I didn't think it was professionally done, which I did look up. It was professionally mixed. The volume level was really low, and I did pull some reference tracks on the same source. So I actually pulled up some Dinosaur Jr. Funny enough to listen to next to make sure I wasn't losing my mind listening on the same system kind of thing. And it was a little low. I just feel like there's a lot of the album we lose because of the mix. There's a lot of it that gets washed over. There's a lot of bass pulled out, and it makes the vocals sound a little strange, and particularly in this track, it's a little better further on. But that's my biggest complaint is the mix overall.
Now, I want to throw in a caveat here. So Minnows played our release show back in January, and so I'm extremely biased because I have the combo of having seen them live and heard the album. And when they played this record live, it was huge. So it is really interesting to hear your guys' notes about the mix, because like that didn't even cross my mind because I was basing it mostly on the live performance because that was the most recent thing for me. So it's interesting hearing you guys talk about it.
I bet they're killer live, based on the
Oh
elements.
man,
Oh my
I bet
gosh,
it's awesome.
yeah, the energy that just comes through in this album alone is insane.
Yeah. I think the name of the game with this track was energy, and it certainly had it. And frankly, that's more important than a great mix.
Yeah.
Obviously, a great mix makes a super great song, but energy
oh sure.
makes a great song, and this certainly had it. To bring up the point of a live show, that's really what this felt like to me. Just like one amp that was humming a little too much due to bad electricity was all that my brain was like, that's probably what it was. And when you have a mixing thing, that's definitely not what it is. But that's how my brain accepted it. And that was perfectly fine. There was nothing bad about the song. It was very fun. It was all very catchy. There were just minute things that was like, I wish I could hear the guitar more. I wish I could hear the vocals more. The drums were very, very banging, in kind of a good way. I liked it a lot. You could hear the individual tones of drums, which I feel like is kind of a lost art anymore. And I was very impressed by it.
I will say the rhythm section across this entire album is really cool. I dig the drums a lot. It comes up in my notes a lot that I like the drums. Yeah, I think that's going to be a common theme, you know.
Yep.
All right, I think that brings us into song number 2 here, Passion Thief. I gave this one a 7 out of 10.
I gave this one an 8.
Gave this one a 6.5.
I gave this a 7.6.
10 out of 10, baby.
I mean, I can go if you want. The key change was killer. The jam's killer. The groove is awesome, and I loved the halftime feel when it was coming up. It's the whole album. I felt like the mix detracted a little bit here. This definitely for me could have been a 10 if I had seen it live, and then I actually have that note on a couple of the songs on this album. Just really impressed with the musicianship going on in the band.
For me, that's kind of what my notes allude to too. Like my whole problem with the song is the mix. If I could hear everything that was going on in that background, if it wasn't so muddied out, this would be like a 9.5, easy. Because the background is so cool. They just cover it up. And the next song is actually when I swapped what I was listening to the album on because of how bad the mix was, like for car play. I will say, listening to this like in a car, like trying to go home to this, the mix was just so bad in the car that it wasn't doing it for me. When I swapped over to headphones and I could listen to it louder, it started filling out a lot more.
Yeah, a lot of my, I guess, issues with it. It's lower, and I didn't think it was that much lower, but I think I just liked the first track better than this. There were some, I couldn't exactly place what the issue with the vocals was. It's either it's too compressed or has too much reverb, and I couldn't figure out which one of those two it was. But it wasn't, I did not dislike this song at all. I think I was kind of harnessed my inner Carl today because it got slower after the first track.
Yeah, I generally do not like when it slows down, but I think it was the halftime groove in this one. I think that's what did it.
Yeah, this song bounced around in all the right ways. We talk about things being like a casserole of leftovers, and you know how it is at home. You make it, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. This one was hitting. You wish you could recreate this one. It just went to all the right spots in the wrong ways, and it's great. The guitar did need to be louder. And the breakdown, I wish, led to like a full-on metal section, but that's just because I want to listen to metal music. So,
Here. Yeah. I feel the same way. it's so interesting. I really appreciate all of the things you guys are saying because it's so interesting to think about the baseline from which we're all um, basing the quality of the songs. I am going straight vibes, and I appreciate you guys are taking more of like a technical thing to it because it's like I'm not a producer, you know. I barely can make demos myself, like scratch tracks for things to give to my buddies that then do then the rest of the guys in the band do a much better job of doing that technical stuff. So it's really interesting hearing all this stuff from you guys because for me, this was the song I got the most excited about on the album. In terms of it being interesting, in terms of the flow of it. Um, you know, you said like the leftover casserole thing. You know, it reminds me what you just said reminds me of that one TikTok channel, Roll for Sandwich. You guys ever seen that?
Yeah.
You know, and it was just like some days you just it seems unexpected, but it hits and it's just so good. And I felt like this was that kind of thing where I like a song, I like a couple songs on an album that just kind of take me a direction I don't think it's gonna go. Um, and this was the one, and this is my favorite song on the album. So
Yeah, I think this was number 2 for me. Did it make anybody else's top 3?
It didn't make my top 3.
It did not, but it was in contention for
Yeah.
a while.
I feel like if I listened to it on headphones, it'd go up by like a point and a half.
This was one where I had a really hard time picking a bottom song.
Yeah.
So I was like, a lot of these, like we've had spreads where we'll have scores of like 8 to 2, and I didn't. My spread is pretty narrow this
It was
week.
just 7 to 9.
Yeah, we'll get into it later. Yeah, this album's super consistent,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's awesome. That's a thing that's really hard for a lot of bands.
And you mentioned it earlier, I forget what you said, but like when we were talking about bottom songs, it hit me that how did we pick a bottom song with Somewhere City?
Yeah,
Like,
and
I
that,
need-
this album reminds me a lot
Yeah.
of a lot of at least the things we liked about that album
Mhm.
were very prevalent here. In fact, we'll talk about it at the end, but I feel like this could have been really high up there if I could maybe remix it a little bit. I may see what I can do with the end tracks. We'll see. But
All right.
Okay, yeah, I think that brings us into song number 3, Future Ruins. I gave this a 7.5 out of 10.
I also gave it a 7.5.
I also gave it a 7.5.
I gave this a 9.
Nice.
I gave it a 9.6.
He had to one up you there.
Spoiler alert: all my ratings are 9 and above. So
It's valid.
9
That's
and
awesome.
above. You know what? I feel like that's how it would be if we saw them live, because
Yeah.
you know
That-
how all
yeah.
of us are. We love the live shows. So, and all of this, our major problems with this album is the mix. I know, that's just going to be a common theme, and hearing it without some of those issues would be fucking awesome.
For sure.
And this one, when I swapped over to headphones and I was getting, a little bit better quality on the mix, I thought the vocals were way easier to hear. I super love a motif that they did where they did like a bit of a slower vocal thing with a really energetic, high-paced background. It hits me every time. It's great.
Yeah, other than that, my notes were the guitar parts are killer, which they are on the whole album.
Oh yeah.
There's a great groove. I love the vocals, and the melody of the vocals on this one hit. And then this was the 1st one that I wrote guitar solo. I wrote guitar solo on like half the tracks after this, but this had a killer guitar solo.
yeah,
They made it faster again immediately after I thought it was a problem. I liked that. It was a catchier song, and I don't know what it was, but the vocals sounded familiar, and I couldn't place what they sounded like. But I like this one a lot. I think this was in my top 3. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm like 99% sure that I've heard this song before, like just through random autoplay. Because everything felt very right. Everything felt very natural. The riffage in this song was so fun. It's very, very seldom you have songs that just make you want to like mosh in the middle of work, but this was like right there.
hmm
I will say it was hard not to move to this album. I was moving like the whole time.
yeah. I'm with you, Logan. I think that like this track 3 was the one that I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting in this album, and I love it. That was the kind of vibe I got from this track, and I'm right there with you. The riffs are killer, and you guys talk about like wanting to see them live, and I could not recommend it highly enough. I believe when they were playing, I think they had 3 guitars. So frontman was playing a Fender. I want to say a Jaguar, maybe.
Nice.
Could have been a Strat. I can't remember exactly which, but there was definitely humbuckers involved. Um, guitarist on to my right was on an SG, and then guitarist to the left was playing a Les Paul. So they kind of had all the food groups going. Um, and so I think that contributes to the lushness of the guitars that I really liked.
It has the wall of sound of like multi-tracked guitars, so it's cool knowing that
Sure.
they're different parts. That's awesome.
Hmm.
All right, I believe that brings us into song number 4, "Make Us Soldiers." I gave this a 7.5 out of 10.
I give this one a 7.
Give this one an 8 out of 10.
Give this a 7.
9.3.
Nice.
All right, this was one of the ones where the energy really stuck out to me. I don't know what it was about this one. I feel like they picked it up, they were hitting me harder, and it just drove the entire song. But speaking of that drive, this was an 8 out of 10. Up until the very end, they have this slow section that I think lasts like 15 seconds too long, maybe. But it lasted just long enough for me to be like, ah, you know.
It's really funny because that's like the only negative note is that I didn't like the vocals during that part.
That's
Everything else, I was like, the vibe, this immediately stands out on this album. And I think even after hearing all of it, this is one of maybe 2 songs that stand out the most to me.
So I wrote vibe in all caps 3 times.
Mhm.
This was the moment when I was like, okay, and I figured out the thing that I liked, and it's not that it sounds just like other music that I know, but it's nostalgic in a way it's really
Yeah.
hard to describe. Like it's nostalgic of 90s 2000s, especially alt rock, but yet it has that modern flair, and yet it isn't a copy of anything. And I thought that was a really cool note because that's really hard to pull off.
I agree with that. I think that, when I was trying to explain what they sounded like to people, the biggest thing I said was like Super Heaven meets Dinosaur Jr. But the other band that comes to mind is Sunny Day Real Estate.
Yep.
But what's interesting to me is it's not a one-to-one comparison, kind of to your point. It's more like a vibe, nostalgia. Like I've heard this before and I have memories attached to this sound, if that makes sense. It's like high school.
Mhm.
And but like the good parts of high school, and so like yeah, I base a lot of these songs on how excited I get, and doesn't necessarily mean it's a driving song per se, but obviously that helps. But I was with you, kind of like whenever the songs deflate a little bit when I either don't expect them to, or I kind of think like, oh, they might deflate, they might slow down here, and I'm like, oh man. But like I feel like that's such a hair splitting thing for me. But that's why this song was not in my top 3. It was just outside of it. I really like this one.
Yeah, all right. I believe that brings us into track number 5, "Rifles and Makeup." I gave this one a 6.5 out of 10.
I gave this one a 7.
6.5.
I gave this an 8.
I gave it a 9.2.
I can get this out of the way.
I can definitely explain why I think this was our bottom song for 3 of us. This is like the beginning of this album reminds me of cresting the hill on a roller coaster, and then right here was where you saw the drop in energy.
Yep.
And this was it's not a bad song. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just in the flow of the album, it just it stops. This song still is a killer jam. I really like the 6/8 or 12/8, whichever one. The only note I wrote that is a plus or minus is halftime doesn't mean anything unless there's a reference. It's just a groove. So even though the groove could have been cool if you had played double time somewhere else, it just didn't really mean anything here. But it was the slowdown. The slowdown is what got me.
Yep, it got me too. I've been talking about the energy the whole album because it's been great, and this one is the rug pull. They just pull it all away from you. And after the little bit that we got in the end of the last song, that kind of made me a little disappointed. It set me up for failure going into this one because I was already like, oh, they slowed it down. And I thought it went on just a little too long. And then they immediately just pulled out all of the energy from me. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. So I hit a low here in the album, but it gets better.
Really, I love this track. I was having a great time. I mean,
Me
don't
too, Logan. Me too.
don't get me wrong. It took the right turn of all the right turns from hell, like full on Yui of a right turn. but it hit harder, I think, and that's really what it came down to for me. Well, taking the energy out is like, yeah, there's less energy, but it's like it's more meaningful. And just also the guitar following the vocal line, and just all the work there was so fun.
So I didn't write it down, but I almost put in my notes, Mr. 80s is gonna love the ballad. So I thought you'd think that's funny.
What?
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
I don't disagree with anything you guys said. I think what's interesting about this is like I think when you listen to a record like this, you kind of have to ask yourself, am I taking in the entire album and taking my time and paying attention to it, or am I just like in the mood for certain tracks?
Yep.
And I think for me, like if I'm doing an album listen, this song is great. If I'm just looking for a track or two to add to a playlist, I don't know if this is one of the ones that I would add to it. But again, that's coming from a place of like I'm looking for something that hits you hard. I'm looking for something that like is exciting and fun, or at least kind of gives me the stank face. And this, I don't think that was the point of this song. You know, I would imagine in terms of the flow. I mean, they're looking at this song like, okay, we started here, like to your point, the crest, and we're gonna drop it down. We're gonna slow it down a little bit for the ladies or whatever. And you know, and I think that it is fairly typical of a lot of albums. You're going to slow it down. You slow it down in the middle, and you bring it back up at the end. You know, and then you know, unless you're a pop punk band or emo band, in which case then you play an acoustic song, last song.
But I love it.
Oh, me too. I mean, I've done it multiple times. So I'm calling myself out here, but yeah, I think like as part of an album, as part of a listening experience, I think the song's great. I think, but if I'm looking at individual tracks, I'm going to go with those, you know, my top 3 or 4, and this just isn't in that top 4.
I do agree. I think that this is one that it's something we talk about on the podcast a lot of being able to move songs. I don't really think you can move this.
You really can't.
I think it's really kind of locked into like that 5 spot no matter what.
Oh, for sure.
Move any of the other songs around, sure, they may work, but this one's stuck here.
And we definitely, if not every week, every other week, talk about songs that are victims of placement.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that this is that, but it definitely happens. That whole full album listen thing completely is different than listening to singles and stuff like that, because we did single reviews. We are probably going to do more in the future. When we do that, they always score higher than what they would score on the album. It's just how it is.
You know what's really interesting too is that as you guys are talking, you know, I'm just kind of wondering if it's like, I wonder if the sound, like vibe wise, it was too similar. Like if it's a track 5 that's going to slow things down, it maybe didn't go far enough to slow it down. Because I do believe the next track, spoiler alert, did do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it did go down like in chillness enough where it was like, okay, this is a middle of the track listing. This makes sense to me, and I wonder if this was just kind of like, you know, like you said, like it's kind of it makes sense as 5. But I just kind of wonder if it's just like it was going up, and then it was kind of like not as big of a contrast for us to go, oh, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I'd like to expand on that by getting into the next song. 6, Curse from Convenience. I actually gave it a better score, 7 out of 10.
That's 6 is 2 truths.
No, it's not.
Incorrect.
Yep.
2 Truths is track 7.
Yep.
Their YouTube playlist for this album is wrong.
Oh,
no.
That's fine.
Yeah, track 6 is Curse from Convenience.
Okay.
So.
Well, neat. That was their official playlist. My bad. Okay, yeah, I gave this a 7.5.
I also gave it a 7.5.
I give this a 7.
I gave it a 9.0.
All right, but getting back into the maybe it didn't go down far enough. I liked the vibe of this one a lot, and I couldn't really figure out, like, when I was listening to it, I couldn't figure out in my brain if I hated it or if I loved it, you know? Because I was just in that headspace where I was like, they pulled out all the energy under me. I didn't like it. And then in this one, it's still gone, but it feels nicer, and they're still doing cool shit. The musical talent's there. I love the build-up that leads into 2 Truths. It is crazy. And also, Carl, I'm sorry that you didn't get to experience that.
It's fine. They would have given me an ad anyway. You know, I have Apple Music, and I don't log in. It's my own fault. It's fine. I literally bought Apple Music because you guys make fun of me. And then I don't use it because I'm an idiot. But no, this song it had really pretty chords. They got like a whole point for having really pretty chords in a song that I did not expect to have it, and that was really cool. Was impressed.
Yeah, every single one of my notes, minus one, is about the guitars. I loved the chords. I loved the vibe. I loved the like counter melody guitar. I hard locked onto that for no reason. Thought it was great. The guitar tones on this might be my favorite on the whole album. I am just not the hugest fan of the vocals on this one, but I like the song. Love the guitars.
It's pretty good. I will say there was like a palm muted guitar track in the beginning that I don't know if it was off time or my Bluetooth got messy or if it was delay was off time. Something got screwy and it made me angry. But I still had a little bit of hope from the last song. Like I was still holding on to a little bit of energy, and I'll be damned if this didn't leach the rest of it. I was like just depressed sitting there listening to this. I had to stop what I was doing to listen to what I was doing. I was like, I'm sad.
Full emo mode.
But it was very, very pretty. When it was doing the build up at the end and it just kicked in the atmosphere, I got really, really excited to not be depressed
Same.
anymore. And I think that's a good thing when your song can take you from one old like mood of just like I don't want to be here anymore to then like it starts building up. I'm like, oh, thank God, in a good way. It was just something reassuring about the album, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I to piggyback off of that specifically, I liked the build up at the end, and it kind of gives you a little bit of foreshadowing for the second half of the album. And I, in terms of again vibe and like excitement, it's the if it means a lot to you or was it too bright to see, too loud to hear from the on Under Oath, you're only not only chasing safety, lost in the sound of separation, where it's just like very spacey, bare bones kind of thing, and then it builds into something. If you have the patience for that, man, does it pay off. But it just depends on like what mood I'm in. And I think when I was listening to this and actually rating them, I think that's I wasn't in that mood. But when I am, man, I love songs like that.
Awesome. Me and Logan locked eyes and it was over.
I did think it's very much the name of the game of some weeks it's just a bad week to listen to the song. We face it every week where it's like catch me in winter and this is it, or catch me in summer and this is the vibe.
So it's really funny because normally my scores drop a ton when things slow down because as the drummer I'm like no faster. But there's something about the energy that carried this week. Like there was so much energy in the first few tracks that when it slowed down I was like, oh, this is okay. I mean, I wasn't mad. Now, it did score a little lower, but it wasn't like normal where sometimes the first slow song will get like 4 points lower than the one before it, even though they sound the exact same, because I'm like, you slowed down. I mean, it didn't do that here.
Yeah, and getting into the next track number 7, Two Truths, it really brings that energy back, and I gave it an 8 out of 10.
I give this one a 7.
Give it a 7.
Give us an 8.5.
9.5.
I love the variety of sounds we get here. I loved the build-up going into this song and getting the energy hit back. The background is just amazing and fun. And the pulled back section at the end here, I felt like they did it so much better.
Yeah, the piano outro was cool.
Oh my God. It just hit so much more. It was awesome. Had a great time.
So, being the drummer that complains about things, this is my number one complaint. There was a snare drum that was tuned low, and I freaking hate that. It sounds like slapping a baby seal or something. Like, it's not my... I hate the, like...
Can we get an example?
Or, like, the boosh. You know, I hate that sound. It's like...
Oh, you don't like the dodgeball tone?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I literally just don't... I don't enjoy that in a snare drum, and I think that's the reason I scored it where it was.
So you hate Knocked Loose. Got it.
I was just going to bring
He
that up.
liked the snare on Knocked Loose.
Okay, well, I was happy they left the ring in on some of them. Some of them were a little dead. Because that's the other thing. A lot of guys, if they use triggers on the front or if they're artificially moving some stuff around, they're literally cut all the sustain out. And I'm like, man, a snare drum should ring a little. It shouldn't ring in the way of the vocals.
The sustain's, yeah.
But
that's what makes that tone fun, for sure.
Yeah, and this one wasn't dead. It just like should have been up like an octave. But it's fine.
It's funny you bring up Knocked Loose because I brought up that exact point about the snare when we reviewed What is that album called? Their last album. I don't remember. What it's called.
Oh, jeez. Sorry, we're on this week's album. I can't think of
It's
a
fine.
couple weeks
You
ago.
won't go before you're supposed to.
Yeah,
That one.
Yeah.
It's too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, that snare in my car does not work. But I didn't notice any issues with it on this one. This song is just a vibe. I really like this one.
I always complain about the snare. Was it last week I said I would have preferred the St. Anger snare drum than what was on the track? I literally I
The
forgot.
empty beer keg.
Yeah, I literally forgot what it was, but I said that at one point. I mean, I always complain about snare tone. I tune my snares really tight. I come from a jazz background mostly and a semi-funk background, but even when I was playing pop punk, I was like breaking snare shells by tuning them so tight. So, I mean,
Sure.
that's what I always have done.
Did you
Just
have
me.
like the piccolo snare, like to get it real high?
I actually used I played marching snares for a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense for jazz. Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, no, for like when I was playing rock, I played like 14 by 10s, like tuned all the way up, and
Okay.
so I was breaking all kinds of things. I used a gong as a ride for a little while. My high school and early college days were really wild. So.
Sounds like it.
All right.
nice.
Let's
The
talk
old,
about
the old gong days.
let's talk about the vocals in the beginning of this one. They were a little weary, but they fixed themselves, so it's okay. I actually prefer that being in there, especially because this one seems like the song that was made for radio play, if any, and it just shows that they're a real band. It's not fully studio produced, and I can appreciate that, while also going for a more popular sound. The bass
Sure.
tone in this song was amazing. I loved it. It was a little distorted, so it was kind of closer to a guitar. Had that Lemmy tone. Gotta love it. And the guitar solo was just insane.
You know, you guys all made really great points, and I'm just gonna like agree with all of you, honestly. I think one thing I'll say, like what I really appreciate about vocals like this is the ability to emote without having to belt. You know, like Jay Mascis obviously, but like even someone like a Tom York or somebody like that, where like you don't have to yelp or scream, and I say that as a screamer, but and I think that sometimes like the emotion that he's conveying doesn't always feel like it should, and I use that term very loosely, should be there, but I don't know. As a vocalist, I appreciate the ability to be raw, and to not be afraid of that, because I spent a lot of time like on my vocalist journey, just like not being very confident in my ability to emote until like maybe like when I started this band, when I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to be as emo as possible while also playing heavy music. So I can respect that a lot.
Hell yeah.
All right, let's get into song number 8, Choke. I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10.
Me and Carson are like reading each other's minds tonight. I gave this an 8.5.
We're on the same wavelength.
It's weird.
I gave this one a
You
9.
can finish each other's.
Couch.
Fruit.
Sandwiches.
He can finish my fruit. Yeah, that's fine.
It does not go the other way. I
Sorry, I
gave
cut
this
somebody off.
a 7.5.
Cool. I gave it a 9.4.
Listen, guys, this one fucks. God damn, I had a great time.
Hell yeah.
I love the vibe the
Such a
entire
good song.
time. The guitar in this one is immaculate. How they weaved everything together even is amazing. And then I think it's like halfway through the song, maybe 3/4, they swap and they just do like a pure musicianship showcase, and like it's just pure background for the rest of the song. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, you forgot to say it got faster.
Oh yeah, that too.
That's
More energy.
Yeah. This was
Yeah.
the moment where it started picking back up uphill, and my score definitely reflected that.
Yeah, Carson's not wrong with the guitar showcases. I love the almost like surf rock guitar at the beginning, and then they went back to the normal sounding guitar for this album, and the solo at the end. I loved the solo. I couldn't tell. I do need to ask. Was there like a chanting section in the vocals, or was that just the distortion on the bottom of the guitar?
I couldn't
It sounded like the
tell.
guitar, and then like every once in a while, I'm like, that might be voices.
I think
I
that
can't
was the
tell.
guitar.
I mean, they could have just run a vocal chain through the distorted amp.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Who
yeah.
knows?
It might have. Yeah, I couldn't figure out what it was. I was hoping that somebody caught it.
I don't want to complain about the mix again. The whole thing was kind of muddy. So like I lost a lot of details that I really I actually during the second track looked up to see when their next live show was, because I was like, oh, I need to hear this live. But there's so many like little nuances and details that I felt like were either buried or lost by the mix in certain spots, and in the lower mids specifically in this song. It was hard to differentiate between things. And if you have 3 guitar players, that makes total sense. That's really hard to pull off in any situation.
Look, I don't want to be an asshole or anything, but this song really just was like a little too long for me. I straight up.
It's not me this week. Oh my god.
I straight up looked down, like after a good amount of time, and was like, "Damn, there's 30 seconds left of this shit." And I wasn't even like pressed. It was just like I was like, I know that there's gonna be more, and I'm ready to move on. I was ready to go. I think I wasn't feeling the long song today.
How long was this one?
It wasn't even that long. It was just a lot of no vocals. I really was fucking with the vocals on this
It's
album.
only 4.5 minutes, brother.
Yeah, and I wanted 30 seconds off of it to move on to vocals. Sue me.
We're gonna have
I
to
don't know
make
how you don't fall in love with those backtracks, dude.
We're gonna have to make a chart about things being under 4 minutes for us to be happy and all this crap. It's so funny.
I
But it's-
regularly listen to things over 4 minutes today. Nah.
For whatever reason, it's the wrong person complaining this week. Yeah.
I'm just so surprised it's not me this week. It's almost always me complaining about a song length.
2 minutes today, tops.
I think I listened to a song today that was 7 minutes, no vocals.
I couldn't do it.
It would kill Carson.
Was
Yeah.
it Explosions in the Sky? Because that sounds like it would be something post-rocky.
It was not.
So.
I don't actually know what it was called.
Ah.
I know the band. You'll find
Right.
out on Thursday.
Yeah, right on. Because I know for me, like if I'm listening to really long songs, it's usually something post-rocky, and so something like Pelican or And So I Watch You From Afar or something like that, where at least there's like movements and things like that
Yep.
in the song.
This is like a
Um,
psychedelic rock, kind of.
Oh, nice. Okay, so like Russian Circles or something like that. Because
I don't know how to say the name of this band. I'm gonna be honest. I hope they don't see this because I've been talking to them.
That's all good.
There's a random letter in the middle of this. It doesn't.
I think it's just Balths. BALTHVS.
Oh, nice. So for Choke, I felt like this was like the most shoegazy song, in the sense that it took a long time to get where it was going, and it was all washed out and stuff like that. But again, I didn't hate it. I think I was in the mood for it, and it hit, and I really liked this song a lot. And the guitars, to all your points, are just mwah. So
Immaculate. Absolutely beautiful. All right, on to song number 9, Swirly. I give this one a 7 out of 10.
I give this one a 9.
7.5.
Give this an 8.
Wait, no.
not 9.8 for me.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I feel bad for this now. Honestly, for me, I think it came from the last song being so good. I kind of jammed myself out. I think I just needed a little break, and I didn't take one. That's really all it was.
That's what Gatorade's for, man.
No, I usually sip that
You get
haterade.
those electrolytes.
Yep. You gotta get electrolytes when you need a break, man.
It's funny. I did take a break in between these two songs.
Do you want me to go? I can.
Oh yeah,
explain it.
that was my thumbs up. I'm done.
Oh, nice. This was super up tempo, and I always love that. There's a lot of energy. There's a killer breakdown in the bridge, and this was another one that I was like, this is really familiar, but not something I heard before.
Well, that's funny. 'Cause my first line is this sounds the most like Somewhere City on the album.
Yeah, and we talked about it earlier. This song reminded me a lot of Somewhere City, and that's the highest rated album I've had on this.
I think that's the highest rated album the show has had.
That was it was actually wild when we were doing that, how much we liked it. But if I didn't have the mix problems I've had with the whole album, this would have easily been a 10 for me. I loved this track.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to note that if this band had not used this track title, we definitely would have found it at some point when we come up with our titles. There's so much energy. Vocals, amazing. Guitar riff, fun. I will say, you said amazing breakdown section. I have solid breakdown-esque section, which really means I got blue balls like out the ass by this shit. Well, because it's got this like really amazing build-up. Like for like the fattest, like chonkiest, chuggy breakdown you're ever gonna hit, like grandma's dying in the mosh pit type shit. And then I remembered that's not this band.
What?
Don't ask.
You've never seen a grandma die in a mosh pit? God, what are you?
Have you ever seen a grandma
What a
put
lame-o.
down a walker and get in a mosh pit? It's a wild sight.
I saw my grandma do that.
I agree with all of you again. You're all very insightful, and I respect all of you. I think Swirly is my second favorite song on the record for literally all the reasons that you guys said. And I'm as again coming from a place of post-hardcore metalcore, I love a breakdown, and I was a little bit like, oh man, but seeing this performed live, I didn't mind, because the energy on stage and like the energy of the song, and they all have these giant stacks, because you got to do that whenever you're shoegazy. You got to have like the overwrought sound, and it just worked so well. I really hope they do a live album of this album, because I think it would do so much in the way that Live at Budokan did for Cheap Trick.
Yeah. So, speaking of guitar tone again, I turned on one of them. I forget which one had a music video, but I turned on. It started with their stack of amps, and I was laughing because it was a bunch of stuff that we would have liked. So the other day I just got an EHX MiG 50, and that's so they have an old Sovtech on the bottom. There's an orange in the middle, so the amp that's in the other room that we demo everything on is an orange. It's like, man, this was really up our alley. As far as
oranges are the best. We all use oranges, so.
Oh heck yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought it was really cool that it was like, oh, I like all their gear too. So that just makes sense.
All right, well, let's get into song number 10, Feed the Flame. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10.
I gave it a 7 3/4.
I gave it a 7.
Give it an 8.
9.3.
All right. I feel like this intro is damn near the perfect length for an intro. It's like 50 seconds long, right? It leads you perfectly into the song, and it's straight vibe from there on out. Like, it leads you into this just energetic, fun. I can't describe it other than that, It just made me want to move. And when a song does that, it's awesome.
It's funny how similar me and Carson. I know Carl said it earlier, but we've had similar notes too. I'm like, this is just a vibe. I don't even know what else to really say about it.
Logan missed Somewhere City, didn't he?
No,
No.
Carson did.
No, it was
Carson
me.
missed it. See, that's weird because on that we were all in agreement on everything, but tonight Logan's the odd man out. It's really weird because we've tended to agree on everything. I really enjoyed the chord progression and energy. The only thing with this one that hit me was like the mix actually got clear for a moment when the guitars first burst in, and I was like, oh, it's here, and then it went away. And that made me so mad that it lost like 3/4 of a point or something.
Yeah. Connor, you're the guy who talks about guitar tones, and you did not mention how fun and gritty they get on this song.
I will say, in the defense of that lack of note, this is where I switched over to the PC speakers.
Oh, okay.
So if my notes get a little bad from here on out, that's why I had to switch.
Yeah, it gets real, just nasty in all the right ways. The chorus has a weird, like, fun, out of tune section. I don't know if it was with the guitars or the vocals or both, but it just worked. It hit your ear right and then resolved. Can't ask for more than that.
You could.
Yeah. For me, there was just the continuation of the second half of the album, which really, I feel like is a mirror image of the first half, with those two tracks that kind of slowed down in the middle. But I do feel like energy was back. Yeah, I thought it flowed. I thought track 9 flowed nicely into track 10, and I was feeling it. So definitely vibes are there.
Definitely a groove.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now on to the last song, Fists Unite. I give this one a 7 out of 10.
I gave this one an 8.
7 out of 10.
8.5.
Nice.
9.4.
So, I liked the beginning of it, where I have this note that says "fuck a wind down." I like going out with a bang. uh, I really enjoyed like the layered vocal stuff in the background, but as the song went on, I just enjoyed it as like a normal song. I didn't think it was amazing. I didn't think it was terrible. It's definitely great, but yeah, 7 out of 10.
Did you not get bored?
I got a little bored.
Because that was one of the things I wrote in my notes. Is I was like, Carson's going to complain about the build section being too long.
It really was.
Because I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the build section. I enjoyed the length of this song. I wrote it as a plus minus because the build section was really cool. It was kind of it was even bigger than what they did earlier with the build section. Just shows that they can do dynamics, do all that stuff. This song came out of the gate really, really hard. And was really cool too, which I always love. I love when a song shows me everything it's got like right on, and I don't have to wait for an intro. Especially last track on the album, that was really nice. And speaking of that, I was happy that the long song was last. At least on this album, that was the right place to put it.
I agree. I think for the first half-ish of this song, I did not think it felt like a last track at all. And then there was kind of a fake-out ending that I think happened a little too early. But everything after that, I was like, yeah, this is the last track, and this does it really well.
All right. Yeah. Intro went hard. Then it changed up on like a weird Beatles chord, is what I call it, where it feels like they just kind of put their fingers on the guitar and it sounded right. And then it went into a riff that I didn't love. I didn't hate it. It was solid. It worked for the song. It just didn't hit my ears in the best way. And then it just broke out into the world's like most busy section ever, and it was great. I loved everything going on. And then obviously we have that build section, and I did note that it better break out hard as fuck. And then right after that, it just says it did. Period. Good ending.
So actually, you know what this reminded me of was Mariana's Trench, because they always do the
Little bit, yeah.
They always do like the overtures where they bring back the whole rest of the album at the end, and this isn't like as obvious as that, but it showed off all of the things they were capable of through the rest of the album. And while that makes it kind of not a great single, it makes it a really awesome album ender. Or if you're a fan of the band, a really awesome thing to throw in a playlist.
Yeah, I once again, I agree with all of you guys. Great insight. I appreciate that. I think that it is a great album ender for me. Again, I think it was because I was in the album listening mode, and so I thought it was a great coda to the record. And I do really like one of my favorite album enders is I Just Want to Sell Out My Funeral by the Wonder Years, because it does bring back even lyrics from the other songs. And I don't know, when you're listening to that entire album, like that one gets me all choked up every time. So to have elements from like some of the other things that, like you said, not as obvious, to bring some of that stuff back, just to be like, hey, this is what we all learned today, I really enjoyed it. So good ender.
Very solid finale. All right, well, that brings us right into pacing. 8.5 out of 10 for me.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 9.5.
Honestly, guys, we all know it. It's the perfect length. We all love 45-minute albums.
I was going to say earlier that we talked about having the little sheet over here of our perfect album. This is pretty close.
Yeah, this is really close.
Yeah, it's the right number of tracks. The only thing I wrote, it probably could have been a little higher, but the way the middle of the album slowed down and picked back up, it kind of made the album feel longer. And that was the weird thing about this one, is it was the right length, but it felt like a longer listen. Like I've listened, we talk about it all the time. You can listen to an album that's an hour and a half that's high energy the whole time, and you're like, oh, where's the last 30 minutes been? Mm-hmm. If you listen to a really sad album, you can listen for 4 hours in an hour. This was one that, because of the change, it just felt long, kind of unnecessarily. I guess it was just the middle. It was weird.
You know what's funny? I actually have a bit of an opposite opinion, only because I kind of like the variance that we get with it. And I feel like it helps the pacing just a little bit in my brain. Even though, I didn't like the slower sections as much as the rest of the album, I still feel like they serve a purpose, and the fact that they're there helps with not getting any fatigue whatsoever. And that's a big thing for me, because I typically get fatigued when listening to similar music. I'm a big playlist guy. I'm a big shuffle guy. I'm a big autoplay guy. I'm not used to just listening album after album after album, So having that variance really helps with the fatigue and just not getting any of it.
I don't know. I could have. I also expected it to be more like a ballad. A lot of the stuff I'm more used to listening to, it'll like pull all the way back. This never like let completely go. I think that was some of it too. Is the songs were super consistent all the way through, so the energy change was the biggest thing I felt, and the mix was super consistent throughout the whole album, even though we didn't like it.
Yeah, I think we've hit the nail on the head by just describing this thing as a roller coaster. You love it or you hate it. Yeah, you're on for the ride. It just goes. It'll jerk you every once in a while, and you go, my neck, and then you just keep rolling on.
Yeah, when I was thinking about the pacing and the flow of it, I thought it was just it's like my favorite album of all time is Clarity by Jimmy Eat World, and how that just feels like one consistent song the whole way through, but you can also listen to individual songs and they're all great on their own. I had a similar feeling to this record, and or if I could cite another different kind of album, White Pony, Deftones' White Pony, like it starts out pretty crazy, it takes it up a notch, and then all of a sudden drops out with Teenager, and that's where like for some people that are really like that genre of music purists, they're like, what is this? And for me, I was like, palate cleanser, and then it takes you right back up. And it doesn't stop. And I felt like this album did a similar thing where if you are okay with that sort of dip, it's fantastic. And I didn't mind, in my album listening mode, I didn't mind it one bit.
So I think the consistency is a big point on this one too. We don't talk about it a lot, but this album having that consistency all the way through was really cool. The fact that there were no terrible tracks on this album, and I talk about Radiohead because I love to be controversial and say In Rainbows is my favorite album and not OK Computer, because
I agree.
That's a valid take,
though.
though.
Because the second half of OK Computer is just all right with a couple good songs. All the bangers are loaded in the front, and it makes it kind of a hard listen unless you're a super deep Radiohead fan. But In Rainbows has this really nice consistent spread all the way through. And even though most of their big hits are on OK Computer, In Rainbows is a better album. So it's the consistency that's a big thing. Yeah. And it's really hard to do.
All right. Well, that brings us into album art. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10.
I gave it an 8.
Also gave it an 8.
You came up with that on the spot, Carl. That's a 10.
It's been written down the whole time.
No, it's been written down.
It's a 10 for me. It's distinct. It's iconic. When you see it, you're like, okay, I want to know what that band is. And then it's also of course, it's on their kick drum. So you're like, yeah, that's a logo,
Absolutely. I think it fits their vibe perfect. And I'm a little biased. If you've seen the album book club art, I do like the graffiti stuff. So seeing a graffitied smile directly contrasts with the rust that's wearing away and kind of decaying the vehicle underneath. I think that's really cool, like artistry, and it sets up this really cool like photography shot. And I really dig. I actually really dig the font that they use in here too, and the fact that the placement of their name, they're called the Minnows, and they place the minnow name in a puddle. So that's kind of funny.
Wow, that was really deep. Yeah. I was like, man, it's a truck on a street. It's cool.
Yeah, for me, this hit. I don't know why. I immediately saw like the art in it, and I'm like, oh my god, brain blast.
When you were talking, I literally looked up the album art because I was like, man, I missed all that. I was like, I need to look at this real quick. No, I mean it definitely would have made me interested to check out the vinyl if it was in a section that I liked. I don't know that I would have picked it up on an end cap. But that's kind of what we talk about is like, would we have bought this record sight unseen? And this is it's fairly high up there, but it's not like a definite yes. So that's how it ended up an 8.
I would have bought it. I think I was like, all right, cool. Logo on a truck. The words are cool. Where in Columbus is this? I think I was trying to see if we've
been there probably.
I was like, have we passed this place?
I did the same thing.
Look,
Short North for sure.
we talk about Somewhere City this whole episode, and then no one mentions. This is almost on par with it. To me, it is on par with it. You guys maybe less so. It's just when I'm thinking Minnows, I'm going to think of this album cover. It's going to pop in my brain. It's ingrained in there to the point of when I went looking for this album today, I couldn't remember the name of it. I knew the band, and I was like, "Oh, it's that one," because I'd shown it in the you'd shown it in the interview, and I'd seen it there.
I think I don't think you're wrong with the Somewhere City comparison. I think that one's more artistic, but they give off the same vibe, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like that, city kind of welcoming, inviting feeling.
And I'll talk about it in a minute. The whole thing I didn't like in the mix, the picture has that vibe too. Like the whole, it's another one of those albums that you get sucked into and you get drawn in by the kind of thing it creates, the atmosphere it creates, and the album art matching that atmosphere is a big deal. So I was impressed that it did that.
All right, are we all good to move on to overall?
I think we got one more.
Yep.
All right, I gave overall an 8.5 out of 10.
I kind of feel like an asshole. I gave it a 7.
Oh, you're just going to complain about the mix the whole time?
Yep.
I gave it an 8.
Gave it an 8.5.
9.5.
If the mix was better, it would deserve the 9.5. But that's my only negative note. Everything else was great. It was a great listen for me. It's perfect lengthwise. The vibe is immaculate the whole time. You have some beautiful guitar work. And honestly, if you're listening to it loud enough, the mix isn't that bad of a problem.
It is. No, dude. I did it against reference tracks. I listened on studio monitors. I cranked it up. I made people uncomfortable by listening loud. I mean, it didn't fix my problems with the mix. And my only reasoning, it's not that I hate the artistic choices someone made. I understand that I don't like their artistic choices, but in my score, the reason I said the mix was a problem is because it's covering up the cool stuff they're doing. The kind of whatever it is covering up all the good instrumentation. It's covering up the vocals at points. It's doing interesting things in a way that just is taking away from their musicianship. And I really likened it to watching a movie that has a filter on it. And you watch that movie and you're like, man, that was interesting. But at the end of it, you're like, did that have a brown filter on the whole time, or is my TV broken? Or video games are even worse about that. It's funny, I'm a racing game guy, so we talk about the Need for Speed era based on what era the sky is, because certain Need for Speed games are literally gray, certain Need for Speed games are literally brown, and everything in the game, you can drive a bright green car and it's slightly brown because of the filter they put on the entire game, and that's just what I felt like it did to this album. And
they put a mud filter on.
It didn't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Carson stole most of what I was going to say, except for I can't wait to see them live. We gotta go.
When, Carl, please inform us.
What did you find on your search?
They didn't have any upcoming shows planned, at least that they had announced. So, I don't know. I didn't do much digging if this was all of their main band or if it's all of their main thing they do. But none of these YouTube videos had very many views. So
that's insane.
Yeah, and that's the same thing I said. As I said, for a small band, because before I looked up to see that someone professionally did the mix, my first thought was, oh, they just mixed this themselves on a low budget. Like, I shouldn't be mean. They're just trying to get their music out. I get it. Sorry, I'm really focused on the mix thing. I'm trying not to be mean, but
I mean, you're more mad about the person who they paid to mix it.
Right. It's not
you're
that
more
I'm
mad at those guys.
I'm not mad at
these.
the band. I'm mad at the recording engineer, and I wrote down his name. I'm not going to say it on live. You can look it up. But
oh my God, Carl!
Carl put his name on a hit list.
No, I literally looked up.
Holy shit,
dude, bro! You got Chris Jericho.
No, I literally
wrote it down.
Yeah, I literally wrote down the mixing engineer, and I started Googling him. He's been in Tape-Op. I mean, the guy has he's won awards for his mixes and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe this guy's just an idiot. I think I just don't like anything he does. Or everything he does is not in this genre. A lot of the albums that he did were punk-based. And that music requires that very raw sound that this kind of has. But, you can't do that with 3 guitars. And you can't do that with 3 guitars playing with delay and reverb and a ton of effects on, where it just sucks everything out of the mix. So, yeah, I got really upset about the mix, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I will agree that this is like a PS2 game, but that PS2 game is Silent Hill. And there is a thick fog on this, so you either love it or you hate it. And I loved it. I was here for it. You just kind of have to feel your way through the journey and let it take you. Yeah, you're searching around for the guitar parts a little bit. But I'm definitely going to go home, plug up my monitors, and just blare it as loud as I can and get lost in the sauce, you know. Sometimes music is meant to sound bad. Do I think they meant for that? No. But I can just, like, headcanon that that's what they went for, and it's, you know what, even better that way.
He's
So.
headcanoning over here. Good lord.
I think this album is meant to be washed over you, and that needs to happen at a high volume or with your headphones on, and you need to, like, sensory deprivation, just let it wash over you. And I did that, and I will be doing it again. I love the songwriting that they're capable of. Something we didn't even mention was the lyrical content. I think that the lyrics were really solid. Like, they didn't they weren't obvious, they weren't like ham-fisted or hit you over the head, but I appreciated like the the kind of politics that they brought into it, the things they were talking about. I align with a lot of that stuff, and so like I think that added a lot of extra sauce for me. And on top of that, like I said, seeing them live and also knowing these guys, I've seen these guys in other bands over the last, like, 15 years that I've lived in Columbus. And so seeing these guys be that good for this long, and now they're all together playing music together, it's just like, it's like the Megazord, you know? And so I really appreciate, so I have all these other, like, kind of biases because of what I know about them. So I really love this album, and I can't wait to hear more from them.
That is a huge thing.
Mhm.
I am so excited for the next one. I'm excited for a live show. I want an interview, damn it.
Yeah, I want to talk to these guys. These guys are awesome.
I'm still looking. Sorry, there's a
Carl's way too engrossed.
No,
in this,
there's
Finding that producer's house.
Yeah.
no. Oh no. He lives in Pennsylvania. No,
Dude.
no, it's bad. I was really unhappy. I was like, no. What part
Carl,
of the?
Carl, hold on,
we're on the internet.
We're
Stop
on the
saying
internet.
things.
We're on the
No,
internet.
no.
Hey, let him talk.
No, I didn't like look up his house. I looked up
Okay.
what part of the U.S. he's from to know not to get anything mixed there. No, like legitimately, I was like, dude, I went through so many anger phrases going through this. Anyway, sorry. No, there's a group called the Minnows in Belfast, Ireland. I was trying to find if I could find anything about their next show, but as goes, the internet makes everything really hard, and I can't find it. So sorry.
All right, is it time for
Logan,
our favorite part of the show?
I do believe
might
it's
be.
time for your favorite part of the show.
It's time for our favorite part of the show, and that is the Plug Yo Shit segment. That is where you might get to plug all your shit, what's happening, what's going on, and what's coming up.
Well, you can follow us on all the social medias. It's either at A Tiger Made of Lightning or on Blue Sky at atmolband.bluesky or whatever it is afterward. We're no longer on Twitter for reasons, but we are on YouTube, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. We're on Bandcamp. All of our songs are on all the streaming services. We just released an album back in January called Manticore. It is immaculate, and you should listen to it if you like metalcore kind of stuff. And our next show is on March 17th at Natalie's in Columbus, Ohio. Sorry, not March 17th, March 16th. 16th, my bad.
What weekday
March
is that?
16th.
That's a Sunday.
Oh,
Yep.
I
Boys.
think we can do that.
Hey, we may be able to pull that one off.
Heck yeah.
All right, well,
So I found it. It's
Uh-oh.
Saturday, April 12th, 2025. They're playing in Columbus with Gloomer and Teeth Marks.
We going.
Cool.
These guys fuck. Come on now.
maybe make an appearance there too. All right, what are we listening to next week?
Hold on, I gotta find it.
Are they playing at Roomba?
Yeah, remember.
Oh god,
Cool.
nothing against Rumbo. Just almost got crushed to death there. Next week we will be reviewing Suitcase by Queen City Silver Stars. Chad's coming in.
Woo! Hell yeah.
All right, that is it for our episode. Thank you for joining us, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Great album choice. Thank you much. All right, we'll see y'all next week.
I've
Hey, thanks for your time, guys. I got to get going, but thanks so much for having me, and hope you have a good time with other shows. All right, take care, guys. Yeah, yeah, it was great talking to you guys. See ya.